The sun burned low over Ikeda Bayside, spilling gold over the crooked rooftops and lazy palm trees. In the heart of the village, two girls raced barefoot through the dirt roads, Bisola and Simi, wild as the harmattan wind, their laughter pealing into the evening air. "We'll always be together," Simi had said once, voice high with certainty. "Nothing will change that," Bisola had smiled, grabbing her friend's hand, believing it. Why wouldn't she? They had shared everything, their food, their dreams, even their childish secrets under the mango tree behind Bisola's house. They called themselves sisters. Chosen, not born. By the time they were 16, the cracks began to show. Small things at first. Bisola's father bought her a second-hand bicycle, and Simi's smile barely hid the flash of resentment. When Bisola won the scholarship to attend a school in Uyo, Simi hugged her stiffly, her congratulations thin and brittle. Simi's world, once warm and full, suddenly seemed too small. Too ordinary. Every step Bisola took towards something better felt like a slap. And no matter how Simi tried to stamp it down, the bitterness grew claws. Still, Simi stayed close. She smiled, laughed, cheered Bisola on. She was loyal, at least, that's what everyone thought. Inside, Simi's heart whispered ugly things. Why not me? Why is it never me? Years later, Bisola returned to Ikeda Bayside, no longer the barefoot village girl, but a woman wrapped in wealth and confidence. Her driver, a man in a sharp suit, held open the car door as she stepped out, heels clicking on the dusty road. Simi was there, selling groundnuts by the roadside. The years had not been kind to her, her dress hung loose on her frame, and dust clung to her skin. Bisola's heart clenched. She remembered the girl who once raced her to the river, who had sworn they would conquer the world together. "Come with me," Bisola said, reaching out a hand that still wore their childhood bracelet. "Let me help you." Simi hesitated, pride prickling her skin, but in the end, hunger won. Bisola's home in Lagos was everything Simi had ever dreamed of: marble floors that gleamed like water, chandeliers dripping with crystals, closets bigger than whole houses in their village. At first, Simi was overwhelmed. She cried the first night, hidden under the velvet blankets. Not from gratitude, no, that would have been too simple. She cried because she realized how much she'd never had. Bisola was kind, generous. She gave Simi new clothes, enrolled her in courses, introduced her to rich friends who smiled too brightly. "Your family," Bisola insisted, pressing keys to a brand new car into Simi's shaking hands, but Simi didn't feel like family. She felt like a beggar dressed up as a queen. And every kindness twisted tighter around her ribs, until all she could breathe was envy. Tund, Bisola's husband, was handsome in a way that made women stumble over their words. Sharp suits, easy laughter, eyes that lingered too long when he thought no one was looking, Simi noticed. Of course she did. At first, she told herself she admired him from afar, harmlessly. But admiration curdled into something heavier, darker. She caught his gaze during dinners, held it a beat too long. She brushed against his hand by accident as she passed the wine. And Tund? He noticed too. Bisola, busy with her businesses, never saw the subtle games unfolding under her roof. She trusted them both. Trusted too easily, loved too blindly, and Simi had decided she was tired of waiting for life to hand her scraps. She was ready to take what she wanted. No matter the cost. The idea came slow at first, like a sickness you don't notice until it's too late. Simi watched Bisola pour Tund a drink one evening, laughing, so sure in her place beside him. She didn't deserve all of it, the wealth, the man, the life. Not when Simi had nothing but borrowed clothes and a face that people only glanced at once. She lay awake at night, staring at the expensive ceiling fan spinning lazily above her, the thought solidifying, if Bisola were gone. The words made her stomach twist at first. But they kept coming back, heavier each time, until they didn't sound crazy anymore. They sounded logical. Necessary. After all, hadn't Bisola taken everything first? Hadn't she made Simi the side character in a story that was supposed to be theirs? She wouldn't even see it coming, Simi thought grimly. She trusts me too much. The poison was easy enough to find. Lagos had everything if you knew where to look, and Simi was good at looking now. She paid a man in a shadowy corner of Balagan Market with trembling hands, the small vial burning a hole in her purse. She almost backed out, that first night. Almost, but then Bisola kissed her on the forehead and said, "I'm so proud of you, Simi. You're becoming someone amazing." It wasn't pride Simi heard. It was pity, heavy, sticky pity that clung to her like a second skin. She smiled back, teeth gritted. And when dinner came, she sprinkled a few drops into Bisola's wine glass, just enough to make her sick at first. Just a trial, just enough to make sure it would work. Bisola laughed that night, joked about feeling tired. Simi laughed too, her heart pounding so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. The real dose came a week later, a dinner to celebrate Tund landing a major contract, shrimp, jollof rice, glasses clinking. Bisola beamed at her husband, oblivious to the glass Simi slid carefully in front of her. Simi barely touched her own drink. She watched. Waited. At first, it was subtle, a show of confusion across Bisola's face, a hand pressed to her stomach. Then a low groan, a stumble as she tried to stand. Tund caught her just before she hit the floor, shouting for the driver, shouting for help. Simi stayed back, wide-eyed and innocent. Playing her part. Inside, her hands were cold and steady. As Bisola's body was carried out the door, her head lolled back, and for just a moment, her eyes locked with Simi's. A look of unbelief, a flash of understanding, and then, nothing. Bisola's funeral was a grand affair. White tents blooming like lilies across a sprawling lawn, choirs singing hymns that floated up into the heavy gray sky. Simi wore black lace and wept prettily when people looked at her. But inside, she was a coiled spring, high on the realization that no one suspected a thing. Tund leaned on her more and more. He drank too much, spoke too loosely. Simi was always there, a comforting hand on his shoulder, a whispered word in the dark, soft, gentle, the perfect replacement. And when, 3 months later, he proposed in a haze of grief and loneliness, Simi said yes without a second of hesitation. Finally, everything that had been denied her was in her hands, or so she thought. At first, life was everything Simi had imagined, the house, the parties, the whispered admiration of the Lagos elite. But then, small things began to happen. Doors creaked open at night without explanation. Mirrors cracked without being touched. Simi heard footsteps where there should have been silence. Once, she woke to find muddy footprints leading from the balcony to her bedside. Another time, the taste of wine turned sour in her mouth for no reason, leaving her gagging. Tund dismissed it all. "You're stressed," he said, pulling her into his arms, already half asleep. "You got everything you wanted, Simisola. Relax." But Simi couldn't relax, not when she heard Bisola's voice whisper her name from the corners of empty rooms. Not when every shadow stretched too long, like fingers reaching for her. Simi lit scented candles every evening now, lavender, sandalwood, jasmine, anything to chase away the smell of rot that clung to the house like smoke. But the scent always came back. Earthy. Damp. Like freshly dug graves. She told herself she was imagining things. She had to be. But one morning, the housekeeper found petals from Bisola's funeral wreath scattered on the dining room floor, the same type of flowers, tied with the same ribbon, and at the very center, lying perfectly still, was a single white dove. Dead. Tund called it a bad prank. Someone's trying to scare us. But Simi knew better. This wasn't a prank. This was a warning. It was the mirror in the master bathroom that finally shattered her calm. Simi had just stepped out of the shower, steam fogging the glass. She wiped it absently, then froze. It wasn't her reflection staring back. It was Bisola, face pale, eyes blackened, lips cracked like dry earth. Her mouth moved, slow and deliberate. "You took what was mine." Simi screamed and stumbled back. Tund rushed in, towel slung low around his hips, eyes wide. "What happened?" She pointed. "The mirror," She was there. Bisola, I saw her. But when he looked, there was nothing. Just Simi, soaked and shivering. I think you need help, he said gently. Simi didn't argue. She couldn't tell him the truth. Not yet, not when the dead woman in the mirror was only just getting started. Simi stopped wearing Bisola's jewelry after that night. But it was too late. Everything she touched, every dress, every room, every photograph on the walls, felt like it was soaked in Bisola's memory. The air was thick with her, even the house began to groan in protest. Pipes burst without warning. Doors jammed. The electricity went off and on every time Simi walked into a room, and then she began to choke at night. Always around 2 a.m., as though invisible hands gripped her throat. She'd wait gasping, clawing at her neck, with the echo of Bisola's laugh ringing in her ears. Once, she coughed up something into the sink, a clump of dark hair. Matted and slimy, her own hair. She was sure of it, but it didn't smell like shampoo. It smelled like the grave. She went to a prophetess in Ikoyi. The kind women whispered about but never visited in daylight. The woman didn't flinch when Simi told her everything. You have summoned her with blood, the prophetess said, eyes milky white. And now she will not rest until justice is done. Then help me, Simi begged. Tell me what to do. The woman laid cowrie shells and cola nuts in a circle. Her hands trembled. You must confess. Make it right. Or the spirit will drag you with her. Simi left trembling. Confess. Give it all up. Lose everything? No. She had come too far for that, but deep down, something in her cracked, because in her gut, she knew, Bisola wasn't haunting her, she was hunting her. The room they'd planned for a future baby was quiet, untouched. Simi often stood in the doorway, wondering if she'd ever feel safe enough to bring a child into this cursed house. One evening, while Tund was away on a business trip, she heard it, the lullaby, soft. Familiar, sleep, little one, sleep, the wind will guard your dreams. It was the same song Bisola used to hum when they were girls, pretending to rock babies made of old rags. Simi stepped into the room. The crib rocked gently on its own. A porcelain doll, one she didn't remember buying, sat propped inside, its eyes opened, and it whispered, murderer. Simi ran, but no matter how far she went, Bisola always found her again. Rain poured like judgment from the sky. Simi hadn't left the house in days. She was gaunt now, shadows collecting under her eyes like bruises. Tund noticed but said nothing. He was distant lately, quiet, withdrawn. That night, the doorbell rang once. When she opened it, no one was there. Just muddy footprints leading down the marble steps, but as she turned to shut the door, she saw her. Standing at the edge of the compound, a woman in a white wrapper, barefoot, head bowed, Simi's heart clutched. Bisola? She whispered, but the woman didn't speak. Didn't move, just stood there, still as death. When Simi blinked, she was gone, but the footprints remained. And the puddle on the floor smelled like the same earth they'd buried Bisola in. One evening, Simi found Tund staring at an old photo of the three of them, her, him, and Bisola at their engagement party. The memory cut like glass. He turned to her. You ever think about her? Really think? Simi froze. Of course. Every day. He studied her face like he was searching for something. I still hear her laugh. Sometimes I smell her perfume. But what scares me? His voice broke. Sometimes I think I see her watching me. In the corners. In dreams. Simi swallowed hard. That's grief. You need rest. He looked at her then. Really looked. She loved you, you know. Like a sister. Simi couldn't breathe, if he ever found out the truth, but maybe, somewhere deep down. He already suspected. It came at 3:33 a.m., the phone buzzed once, then again. Unknown number, half asleep, Simi answered, silence, then breathing, she sat up. "Hello? Who is this?" Then came the voice, hoarse, low, like it had clawed its way from under the earth. "You'll never know peace. Until you beg for mine." Simi dropped the phone, the number vanished from her call log. Like it had never existed, but her ears rang with that voice for hours afterward. And in her dreams that night, the grave opened wide. Driven by desperation, Simi returned to their village, the place where it all began. She stood by Bisola's grave under a bleeding sunset, heart pounding. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't understand. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. I just wanted my own life." The wind howled through the tall grass. The trees groaned like they were bearing witness. Suddenly, the ground trembled. Not enough to knock her over, just enough to feel like something deep beneath her stirred, and then the worst part, the grave looked slightly disturbed. Like the earth had shifted. Like someone, or something, had moved. She ran. That night, Simi dreamed she was back at the dinner table. Bisola sat across from her, head tilted, smile too wide. Her eyes were hollow now, leaking soil. Tun sat between them, sipping wine like nothing was wrong, until he turned to Simi, and blood gushed from his eyes, his mouth, soaking his shirt. Simi screamed, but no sound came out. Bisola reached across the table, her fingernails long and broken, dragging through the tablecloth, toward Simi's trembling hand. "You drank from my cup," Bisola hissed. "Now you will drink from mine." Simi woke up choking on air, heart racing, hands stained with red. Tund had stopped coming home. At first, it was excuses, late meetings, overnight trips. Then he stopped answering Simi's calls altogether. When he did pick up, his voice was clipped, distracted, distant. Simi knew why. He was afraid. Maybe not of her, not yet. But of the house. Of what lingered in it. She didn't blame him. She too had begun to avoid the master bedroom. The bed felt like it breathed at night. The wardrobe creaked open even after she locked it. Once, she found her nightgown torn in half on the floor with no memory of touching it, and every time she looked into a mirror, her face looked thinner. Her eyes darker. As if something was feeding on her. She wondered if Tund had seen it too, or worse, if Bisola was starting to show herself to him. Ngozi, the old housemaid, returned for her final paycheck. She had quit 2 weeks after Bisola's death, refusing to sleep in the house even one more night. Simi begged her to stay for tea. Ngozi sat, her eyes never resting. Her hands clutched her Bible like armor. "She's not resting," the maid whispered. Simi stiffened. "I saw her in the corridor," Ngozi continued. "The night before I left. She was walking, slow and silent. Her feet didn't touch the floor. She looked at me with empty eyes." Simi tried to laugh. "Grief can make people see things." Ngozi didn't laugh. "She's waiting for justice, madam. That kind of pain doesn't stay buried." The maid left the house and never came back. Simi poured herself a drink to calm her nerves, but the liquid in the glass turned thick and black in her hands. She dropped it. Simi went through Tund's office out of desperation. She needed to know if he'd told someone. If he knew more than he let on. She found a USB drive labeled B. Just one file inside, a video, no date, no title. She pressed play. It was footage from a dinner party, months before Bisola died. The three of them laughing, toasting. Simi and Bisola clinking glasses, but then, frame by frame, the video slowed. And Simi's smile froze. She watched herself slide something into Bisola's drink, small, barely visible. The camera angle shifted, probably a security feed they forgot existed. She dropped the drive. How did it get there? Who saved it? Why had Tund kept it? Unless he knew, he had always known. The next morning, Simi awoke to find something scrawled across her bedroom mirror. Her name, written in blood, not paint. Not lipstick, blood. She stumbled back, gagging, and tripped over something soft and cold, a dead bird. Another dove, its beak torn open, eyes glazed. Clutched in its claw, a piece of paper, a single word, confess. She ran to Tun's closet. His clothes were gone, all of them, in their place, a note, I can't stay in this house. I don't know who you are anymore. The walls around her seemed to close in, and from the corridor, she swore she heard footsteps. That night, the compound's gates groaned open, slow, metallic, dragging like chains. Simi watched from the window. Heart pounding, a woman stepped in. Slender. Graceful. Draped in white from head to toe, she didn't walk. She floated. Simi backed away. No, no, no. The woman turned her head slowly, her face was bone white, but the eyes, they were hers. Bisola's, but hollow, endless. Simi screamed, slammed the window shut, but in the reflection, the woman stood behind her, and whispered, you killed me, now I will unmake you. On the light, nothing, no blood. No Bisola, just a cold, cloying scent in the air, funeral roses. Simi jolted awake to the smell of smoke. Not firewood. Not incense. Burning flesh. She rushed to the kitchen, but everything was untouched, until she looked outside. The garden, Bisola's favorite place, was engulfed in flame. Flowers twisted, screaming silently. The bench where they used to sit together snapped in two, split by fire. Simi ran for the extinguisher, but when she looked again, it was gone, no fire. No smoke. Just the charred scent that lingered. She collapsed to the floor, shaking. Whatever was happening wasn't haunting, it was a reckoning, and it wasn't over. Desperate, Simi found her way to a small church in the outskirts. She begged the pastor for help. After a long silence, he led her into his office, locked the door, and said quietly, you are being judged. I didn't mean to kill her, she sobbed. I just wanted more. He studied her face. You didn't just kill the body, daughter. You betrayed a covenant. Friendship. Trust. That is blood no ritual can cleanse. Simi gripped the edge of the table. What can I do? He opened his Bible, placed a hand on her head. Confess publicly. Return everything. If you truly seek mercy, give her peace. But mercy, Simi realized, had long left her house, and maybe so had her soul. She recorded a video, face pale. Voice shaking, I poisoned Bisola. She was my sister, my savior, and I killed her for a man, for money, for envy. She uploaded it everywhere, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. Within hours, it went viral. Tun saw it. His silence was deafening. The media descended. Her name trended, not with pity, but with horror. They called her everything, witch, Jezebel, murderer. But Simi didn't care anymore, because she knew, even if the world forgave her, one spirit wouldn't, and that spirit was coming. It rained again, a torrential storm that turned Lagos to rivers. Simi sat alone in the house. No lights. No staff. No power. She waited. The door creaked open on its own. And Bisola entered, not the bleeding, terrifying ghost of before. This time, she was calm. Dressed in the wrapper she was buried in. Eyes deep, but no longer hollow. Why? Simi whispered. Bisola sat across from her. You were my heart. Simi wept. I was broken. I thought you had everything. I had love. You had me. That was enough. Simi dropped to her knees. I'm sorry. Bisola touched her face. Cold. Gentle. Then give what you stole. Let me rest. And just like that, she faded. They came for her at dawn, no sirens. No drama. Just a knock on the door and 3 plainclothes officers standing outside the gate, holding a warrant in one hand and a screenshot of the video in the other. Simi didn't run. She didn't scream. She just nodded, quietly put on a headscarf, and followed them to the car. As the gate shut behind her, the mansion finally felt what it had long been, empty. The confession had traveled far, farther than she imagined. It crossed states, time zones, and landed in the hands of a relentless prosecutor. The cause of death had once been labeled cardiac arrest. But now, with new evidence and Simi's own words, the case was reopened. Tun didn't speak at the trial. He sat in the back row, stiff and unreadable, while journalists flashed cameras at every sob and silence. The judge read the charges: manslaughter by poisoning, willful deceit, destruction of evidence. Simi didn't plead for mercy. "I deserve this," she said in court, her voice hoarse. "I took a life that wasn't mine to take." The sentencing was swift, 20 years without parole. In the Women's Correctional Center, Simi became a shadow of herself, quiet, withdrawn, but oddly at peace. She spent her days in the prison chapel, her evenings teaching other inmates how to read. Every year, on the anniversary of Bisola's death, she would sit by the barred window and whisper an apology. Not to the sky but to the floor, to the cold, still earth where Bisola now lay. One day, a guard handed her a letter. It was from Ngozi, the old maid. Inside was a single photo: Bisola's grave, newly marked, clean, and blooming with white doves carved into the marble, and a note: "She rests now. Maybe you can too." Simi cried then, not because the weight was lifted, but because she knew some debts would never be paid in full, even with the bars, even with the time, even with blood for blood.